Offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik talked to the media this week, as he always does. The first question was about how CJ had described his improvement in learning how to take what the defense gives him. The Titans played conservatively last week. CJ took a lot of stuff underneath and try to push the issue, and maybe some of the growth he's made as a game manager.
The biggest thing when you just play that position that we talk about all the time is controlled aggression. Because you got to be willing, like when the look presents itself, when the hole's there, you got to be ready to rip it, which is a mindset. It's also technique. It's also footwork. It's reps that have been built and trust that have been built with the receivers that are running the routes. So that's like the number one thing we talk about, but then it's quickly followed by what if it's not the right time? What if the hole is just too small? What if a receiver just on this particular rep didn't win? Or, what if you thought it was going to be a look and they rolled to something else? And being able to control those situations and still make a profit on the play. And he even, he would say early in the year, he believed that also, but putting it into practice takes time and reps. And I think he's shown that growth.
That's been a really huge part of what Bobby had said about CJ believing that. And then learning how to implement it, it takes time. And we've seen that growth over the year. You go back to that first game, CJ was 30 for 47 for 384 yards, 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. It looks awesome on a box score, but we all knew at the time, all right, it did look impressive. It looked like he had made growth from week 1, but it was in garbage time. The Colts had a lead that entire game. So you didn't quite know what to make of it. I think in relation to what Bobby was talking about, understanding and knowing what you can and can't get away with. The really intriguing and unique thing about CJ early on was that he was throwing the ball deep. He was aggressive. He was averaging 7.9 yards per attempt with 0 interceptions in the first 5 games. So he was throwing it deep. He got lucky a couple times, but was really being careful with the ball. And if anything, a lot of it was about knowing when to quickly come off the first read, because those first 2 games, this Colts game included, he took 11 sacks. So there were times where he either didn't know when to quit on a play or didn't know when to move quickly or to see what the bad first read or second read was and to move on quickly. That's where he really has come along over the second half of this season. Next, Bobby was asked about preparing to face the Colts front 7 defensively.
Yeah, there's not much space in the run game, and you don't have a lot of time in the pass game. So that's about as hard as it gets when you're talking about offensive football. A lot of times for us, a lot of what we do starts with the run game to set up play pass. That's not as easy this week for certain. And then when you go drop back pass, the front 4, they make sure you play on time and on rhythm. And that's something that we got to be on top of, starting at the quarterback position, but really all the way across the board. We got to make sure, when the time is right, like I said, we have controlled aggression and we're putting the ball up, but by and large, we just got to do everything we can to make a profit on every play.
All right, I'm going to disagree with Bobby Slowik slightly when he says that there's not a lot of room to run in the run game. The Colts are allowing over 120 yards per game rushing. The thing is that they are capable of making a lot of splash plays in the backfield, both against the run and also against the pass. I'll get to that in a minute. But in the run game, they've got the 5th most TFLs in the league. The Texans actually have the 2nd most TFLs in the league, but they might allow chunk yardage in the run game, but they can also kill drives. And what Bobby was talking about, those guys in the middle, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, they are absolute studs. Grover Stewart just came back from a 6-game PED suspension. I'm just going to assume it was tainted supplements because I like Grover Stewart a lot. Frankly, I don't know what these kids get on the internet these days. Back in my day, it was mini thins and memories of an unhappy childhood. That's what fueled us. These kids are different. Oh, but they do not blitz a lot at all. They get it done with their front 4. They've got the 5th most sacks in the league too. So splash plays behind the line of scrimmage that kill drives, that's what they're good at. There are opportunities there in the rushing game. We'll get to Devin Singletary here in a little bit. In fact, right now, because Bobby was asked about what running back Devin Singletary has done this year.
Yeah, I think, I said last week, we believe he's playing at an exceptional level, and I don't think that's changed. I think in the run game, the command he has right now of the scheme and of what we're trying to get done has manifested in how we're running the ball. I also think it shows how much better and further our front and our tight ends have come in that area. And just there's holes that are there, and Motor, every time we get the structure we want, the ball's going where we want it to go, and then he's almost always making at least one guy miss. Like we're blocking things for 4, he's getting 7, 8, 9, which that's big time in the run game. And then there's been a couple plays where we might not have had the right structure, or we didn't block it particularly well, and he's made something happen on his own. I think last game, like, we had a 24-yard run, something like that, longest run of the season. And I mean, it was not well blocked. I mean, he just went out there and made something happen on his own. We had 2 critical blocks on the play that really helped spring him. But he's playing football at a really high level. He's seeing it really well. He's very confident right now, and that's big when you get to this time of year.
Laramie Tunsil had a pretty crafty hold that sprung Singletary around the left side. But I think the huge question really is, yes, the run game has improved, but how much can you trust it and rely on it down in the red zone? Because the red zone offense hasn't been great. It's not as bad as I think some people feel. They're about 16th or 17th in touchdown percentage down in the red zone right now. So middle of the pack, if they can figure out how to really make it click and go down in the red zone, that helps spring tight ends on routes. That helps bring a safety up into the box to get more one-on-ones in the end zone. But they haven't been able to do it so far. So that's the step I'd love to see him take versus a defense and the Colts that does struggle at times. But just by way of comparison, in week 2, the Texans ran 26 times for 52 yards, 2 yards per carry against a defense that was playing like relative prevent for most of the game. It was really, really bad. One big change of the times, Dameon Pierce had 15 carries. Devin Singletary just had 2 in that game. A lot of people were wondering why the hell that was the case. And now Devin Singletary gets the lion's share of the carries. Slowik was then asked on how he feels he's grown as a play caller.
I'd say early on there were definitely some growing moments as far as situations. I'd probably classify myself as a little more on the aggressive side as far as play calling goes, and knowing when to push it and when to back off a little bit. And I think early in the year there were some lessons there, but then truthfully, since the year's gone on, really past week 4, a lot of it now, growth for me has been more understanding our team and our team understanding me.
The first things that spring to my mind where he showed his youth as an offensive coordinator were the Baltimore game, and he admitted this afterwards. They were just trying to do way too much. They were trying to implement the full Monty offense before guys were really ready. So with all the shifts and motions that they love to have, it was just a lot for not just CJ, but all the skill position guys to process. The other one was definitely past week 4, but the Bengals game, in which he decided to throw when really at that point in the game, all the Texans had to do was run the clock out. But he decided to throw to really clinch the game. CJ ends up throwing an interception. CJ in that instance needs to be more aware of the situation too. Maybe for both those guys, that was kind of like the last time I really felt like, oh, okay, this is a rookie OC and a rookie quarterback. Since then, it's been a lot of just conventional NFL issues. And frankly, from a game management perspective, both Bobby Slowik and D'Amico Ryans have had way, way, way fewer issues than either of the 2 previous guys who'd been in the league a combined 487 decades. And this last answer I was curious about, because he was asked about Chris Strausser, the offensive line coach, who oversaw an offensive line that really struggled in the first half of the season to block, especially in the run game, but who also did happen to spend the last few years in Indianapolis.
Strauss has been phenomenal. It's been a brand new scheme for him. Very, very different from what he's run in the past when he's coached at the NFL level. So, like, even just through the offseason, like the growing moments he had to go through of trying to figure out exactly what it is we wanted done on how I see outside zone, how I see things playing off of outside zone, inside zone, gap scheme, like all the different runs you can have and different emphasis because of the starting point being so different. Like there was a lot of communication and just growth there. And then all of a sudden you get in season where you're working through the communication of that to the players. And next thing you know, we're cycling through, I feel like a different front 5 every week.
I think the last part there, the cycling through a different front 5 every week, that made it 4 times as difficult. And there's part of me that's like, okay, so why did they hire a guy that had such a hard time adjusting to this scheme while you've got a rookie quarterback in there? I don't know. Not everybody's available every single year. Chris Strausser had a lot of respect as an offensive line coach, but I mean that was an issue for a good chunk of the season. And the fact that CJ was able to develop as well as he did without the support of a running game, that was one of the things that was, I think, less heralded. The blocking schemes aren't necessarily all that technical. A lot of the stuff with a Kubiak Shanahan, and really by now it's more the Kyle Shanahan part of the run game that's difficult, is just all of the pre-snap adjustments, because they're going to want to try to get the perfect matchups, move a tight end over so you've got him blocking on the actual weaker defending defensive end. You get the linebackers misaligned. And when you do all of that, you have a little short motion with the fullback that can change everybody else's assignments too. And a lot of times it's not even necessarily as much about the technique as it is just flat out definitely 100% knowing who you're supposed to block. And they struggled with that early on. They've made a lot of progress with that. So getting these guys lined up properly and CJ getting them into the right runs, it's going to be a big test this week. I'm Seth Payne, played 10 years in the NFL, 5 years for the Texans. This is my YouTube channel. If you liked it, please subscribe. I'll make you so happy.